Earnestly podcast coming to you on August 5th, 2021. How you guys doing? Been a little while since I did a little solo pod like this. And been probably about at least a week and a half or something of that nature. But anyway, this podcast, of course, is subscribed on any podcast catcher on iTunes. Again, it's not iTunes, it's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all that good stuff. All right, so today, this week, actually, this month, this week, whatever, is actually a very special time in this podcast because this week marks the 10-year anniversary of this podcast. I don't remember the date when I started, but I started podcasting in August of 2011. And that was months of trying to get my own podcast because I was everything I learned on the fly. The medium was so new to me at the time too. I was listening to podcasts at that time too a lot, but didn't know how to really put all this together. It was really a labor of love. So I remember when I bought my MacBook for the first time. I think was that spring. I think it was like that spring around that March. And I remember getting it specifically because I wanted to try the GarageBand utility because I was told at the time that GarageBand was the way to do podcasts. So I decided to get a MacBook Pro. And again, I took months and months of trying to figure it out. What was an RSS feed and what was subscribe and all these little particulars. And I was I remember a lot of times. Now, granted, at this time this is pretty easy because I didn't have kids at the time. I just got married, and so at that time it was pretty. I had no other than my marriage, I had nothing really to worry about in terms of like time. Marriage and work was the only things that kept my time at that point. So I had all the time in the world to learn this stuff, and it took me a couple months, and I finally ended up getting it at some point, and we started this podcast. This podcast was under another name at the time. It was called EJ Sports Rap. The name came from when I used to host a Monday morning sports show when I was in middle school, and that was the whole idea of me doing that. So we remember that because at the time too. Also, this is when probably around my really really heavy sports days when that's all I cared about was sports. Some people probably still say the same thing now today, but that's not really the case. To be honest with you, I like to think I'm a lot more well rounded now today than I was back when. But back then, that's all I cared about. So I wanted my own sports show, and at that time, I think honestly that was a pretty big boom of people being able to do these things on their own because, growing up, if you wanted to get into sports media, if you wanted to do journalism, you wanted to do radio, anything of that medium, you had to literally go to school for it and had to even break through to the industry, whether it was working for an ESPN, Fox Sports, or even local level stuff. You had to go to school. You had to really have a lot of chops through the industry, and at the time we didn't have like the ability to do things on our own. We had to go to school for it. We had to be able to have access to, for example, to equipment. You had to unless you had a lot of money, you had to go to school for it. And so I ended up not going to school for that because by high school I lost interest in doing media. And then I got back into it probably 2009, 2010. I got back, heavily into sports again. And then I was like, oh, well, I kind of like doing this. But I mean, I heard about podcasting, but I still was kind of new, kind of green to the game. And again, we come now to 2011. And I had my equipment and the MacBook, and I didn't have a mic at the time, no mixer. I literally did my shows off the computer. I literally just did the shows off the computer. It wasn't fancy. To me, what I cared about more than anything else back then was the content. I didn't care about anything else but the content. So, those shows were great. They're very green. I learned a lot about the medium, and through the years, in these last 10 years, I've met some tremendous people, made some great friends across the medium. People who podcasted, because one of the things this podcast has done is really create a bigger world, a bigger community, which I'm very proud of, that people I've met and people I've remained friends with to this day. Remember the first show I ever did, the first couple shows I ever did was actually with our own Zach Degenerate. He'll be on the podcast later in the month when we do our NFL over unders, our annual NFL over unders that we started way back when. And you know, it was a really very innocent time. A very innocent time. I remember doing the shows, twice a week. I did a show every Monday and Friday, I think it was. And what we would do at the time, I lived in a little apartment in Delray Beach, and I would have Zach and maybe some people come over to the house in the mornings, and we would do I used to work nights back then. So what we would do, they'd come over to the house, and we would do an hour and a half, 2 hour podcast, breaking down all what's going on in sports at the time. And it was really innocent. A lot of fun though. I may post I think I may post some of these old episodes on my YouTube page one of these days. But it was a great time. It's tremendous time. But the thing I think I'm proud of now is that this podcast through the years has become an evolution in terms of the things I'm into. What exactly, this has gone from a sports podcast to now just everything. Like, I would say of this show, this podcast is probably about 50 to 60% sports, but this podcast has been more reflective of who I am as a person. At the end of the day, as I got older, if you listen to the podcast for the full 10 years, you've seen me. Remember, I just got married. Like I said, just got married. Had my first kid 2 years in. I started doing the radio show thing, internet radio show. This thing expanded for a little while. I ended up making a lot of, we started Opinion Nation for a while. I made some friends and networking and stuff. And, Mark Francois still along for the ride, of course. Jabari Davis and, guys, Jameson Wells, people I met through the years and, who I still keep contact with still. And started Opinion Nation, and that expanded from this podcast into that. And then things along the way. But this podcast, through the years, you've gone through a journey. And it's some of it's been some bumps, been some failures, of course, and but overall, I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. And again, this podcast has been something that, as we've gone on, especially the last latter half of the 5 years, we've become more very what's the word I'm looking for? We've gone on for a ride now, in a sense where you learn more about me. It's more into sports. Then I get into political discussions and lifestyle discussions and pop culture discussions, and it's been that kind of thing. And I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of what we've done to show. And you've learned about me. You've gone through this with me. Now I have 2 kids, 8 and 4 years old, and it's been a wonderful ride. I was going to do something a little more special for the show. And I decided to, what's the point? I mean, that's not the point. I wanted to initially do, people maybe leave some comments on the show. Maybe leave some, well wishes. But it's like, I started saying to myself, why look back? Let's move forward. That's kind of my thing. Let's move forward because this is part of the evolution. You know what I'm saying? So, 10 years. It's been a fantastic time. So, all the folks, especially who've been on the show, who's contributed to the show through the years, the G. Stelios and the Kyle Nashes and the James Neeses, of course, who are still on for the ride, Jabari Davis, Jameson Wells, Mark Francois, you name it. You know who you are. There's many people. Eddie Banks, friends of mine that have come on this podcast, people in the media who come on this show, Justin Tinsley's in the world and who've now gone to do ESPN. A lot of people who have gone through this 10 years with me. We've had sports legends, Kenny Anderson's in the world and Leonard Marshall come on the show. People I've admired as a kid. People who have done a lot of cool things. And like I said, my wife has been on the show many times. My family members, of course, my dad. People have been on the show for 30 years and who have colored the show and made this show what it is today. I really appreciate you guys taking time to be part of this. This is a labor of love. This is something I do because I love it. I don't have to do this. I just do it because I love doing it. While I love to make what I love to have this be more than a hobby down the road. Absolutely. I say down the road. It's been 10 years. Would I like this to be something I can, do this and not have to work a regular 9 to 5? Of course. I would love to do that. But at this point now, it's now something that where I just don't. I want it to be something that's real and authentic. I don't want to be just sports. I don't want to be just this thing. I want to be able to just do it how I want. If I want to send this microphone and talk about, I don't know, what's going on in the world, what's going on with the virus, and what's going on with Britney Spears' conservatorship. I want to do that. I want the space to do that, and that's what we've gone from being a show that was centered only around sports to now being a show that's 10 years in, being real and being earnest. I mean, I know this show's based off my name, of course, but earnest means honest, and it's being authentic about ourselves and being about myself. So to all the people who listen to this podcast who are still along for the ride, I appreciate you guys. I thank you so much for continuing to support. And look, I'm not slowing down. I'm doing this for me. This is something that it's a labor of love. I love doing this, and I'm gonna continue doing this moving forward. So again, thank you for 10 fantastic years, fun, challenging, adventurous years doing this medium. Really appreciate it. So anyway, okay. So what's going on with me personally as of late? Well, right now my life right now is centered around one thing. It's centered around potty training. Why you say that? Okay, so I have an 8 and 4-year-old. Like I said, my 4-year-old Logan, he is supposed to start preschool next week. Next week Tuesday, the kids go back to school. My 8-year-old will be in 3rd grade, of course. However, for him to be able to go to VPK preschool, whatever, he has to be potty trained. Now we've been potty training him pretty much off and on for the last 2 years. There's moments where he gets it and he doesn't. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. It's still kind of our fault as parents that we have not stuck with it in the same way we should have. We figured let him come naturally to it because we didn't want to pressure him in that way to just do it, because then he would, you get agitated and not want to do it anymore. I get that. Every kid's different. Our oldest son Eli took to it a little quicker than Logan. But we have to. Now we're at the point now where school starts next week. Okay, we have the option. The other option we have now is to make him wait another year. I don't want to do that. I want him to wait another year just because he won't potty train. So my wife and I decided to kind of turn up the heat this week, if you will. And so this week we did. This is last week for school for next week for both kids. We decided to have my oldest son Eli stay with his grandmother, my mother-in-law, for a week. So that way, Logan will not be distracted with this, because Eli and Logan are very close, and Logan does everything Eli does, and if Eli is doing something, Logan will not pay attention. He would not pay attention. So we figured have Eli at the pitch for a couple of days, stay with Grandma or Grammy for a couple of days, for a week, and we'll lock in and have Logan potty train. And I gotta tell you, it's been really well. It's gone really well. We actually ended up buying Logan because initially when we were potty training him, we decided not to buy a potty itself, like a small kid's potty. We decided to buy a cushion for the actual toilet that we have now, and like I said, he would go in there at times, but was never consistent. Like he goes when he wants to go. He's still in pull-ups, but like I said, we've turned the heat now this week, and he's done a good job. We actually got the little potty for him to pee in. And it's a labor of love. It's why I haven't had a chance to do podcasts. It's why I haven't had a chance to do anything outside of work, because this is something we needed to do as a family. We need to tackle on all fronts. So my wife was home last 3 days. She done a fantastic job with him. He's been peeing in the potty without a problem, wearing the same underwear all the way through the day, not to wet it, which is good. He had one accident only, I think, on Tuesday, and that was when he pooped his pants. I don't think the pooping part he hasn't really gotten yet. He's still almost there. The peeing part is fine. Today is my turn to have him by himself, and he did, again, fantastic job. 4 days in a row where he's gone to the bathroom, to the potty, and without a problem. Same underwear, none of it wet, none of that. And he's done a great job. I'm very proud of him. And now he's at the point now where he's doing it now where he doesn't need my help. Like, when I say my help, I mean, in other words, me telling him, hey, Logan, I'm gonna go potty. He goes himself, then tells you after the fact, hey, Daddy, I went potty. So he's done a great job. So I think we are at a place now where I think we can say that he can go to school now. I think preschool is now the next step for him now. Because like I said, I don't want to start. Why would I want to start him a year later just because he's not potty trained. So it makes no sense. If we can still turn the heat just a little bit, but still be consistent with it, and he's ready to. And I think the thing is with him too, he's very smart kid. So, like I said, one thing I've learned, every kid's different. Like I said, Eli took to this a lot faster. Logan a little slower on this one, but again, every kid's different. Eli didn't have the pressure of having another brother or sister around him because he was the oldest kid. Logan has a little more distractions. So, very proud of my boy. So I think tomorrow my wife's gonna go in tomorrow to register him for school, hopefully, and that'll be that. So, anyway, what's going on around the world now? Vaccinations. Okay, so if you listen to this podcast this year, I've been one that's kind of been, when it comes to vaccinations, I'm vaccinated. But remember a couple months ago, I did a couple episodes where like I discussed how I had a lot of fears about vaccinating because I wasn't sure. I get a lot of information out there. Some of it seems legit, some of it is bullcrap, whatever. But now we have a issue with this Delta variant. Now we're hearing this mutation of the coronavirus now. And there's still a good chunk of this country, I think about, what's the number? I think 40% of the country who has not gotten vaccinated at all, or at least has one vax, and that's it. And I don't know the numbers on that one. Don't quote me on that, but there's definitely a large number of Americans in this country that do not have the vaccination for a reason. It doesn't mean it has to be political. There's a lot of people who are liberals don't have it either, and I know that I don't have it either. So it's not just a political thing. It's just people just don't feel comfortable with the vaccine. And I kind of get that. Because again, back in March, April, when before we, my job, for example, decided to, open up, the mask, like lay down the mask mandates or relax it, should I say. I decided to go get vaccinated because of, my wife pushed me to do it, number one, and and I get the fears. Number one, I hate needles, first off. So I'm not gonna sit there and I have my own personal issues with that, but there's a lot of people who still just don't want to get vaccinated despite this Delta variant, and it's disturbing because it's disturbing for me for the fact that I think what bothers me more than anything else is that, and I've said this before in this podcast, that it's one thing if you have legitimate concerns about the vaccine. I had legitimate concerns about the vaccine at one point. Partially because I hate needles, but that's a small portion. You get over that. But if you have legitimate concerns with the vaccine, it's one thing. I get that. But here's the thing, though. If you have legitimate concerns with the vaccine, go see a doctor. That's the first move. Your first move shouldn't be going on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and looking at random posts, a lot of unsourced information, or information you know that's confirmed or not. That's the first move. Your first move shouldn't be depending on people. Half these idiots they didn't go to college. I'm not saying that you just because you're in college you're not smart. I didn't go to college. I didn't finish college, so whatever. But my thing is, if you have legitimate concerns about the virus, go see your doctor. Quit getting advice from people, random folks on social media, random dorks for clicks, people who have agendas. So a lot of people in the media, both sides, but especially on a specific side, who have agendas here. Go see people who actually have a little more insight on the situation. Me, what I did when I had concerns, I have 2 cousins who are doctors. I spoke to them, and they calm my fears. I asked the right questions, and they told me where to go, what this is and what that is, percentages, data, all that. Yes, we're learning about the vaccine still. We are. But still, go see people who actually know the science. It disturbs me that as a country now, we become a country that actually, all of a sudden, we're anti-science. What is that? Like, we've done vaccines for decades, for centuries. Polio, you name it, the flu, and all that. This is just another thing in the arsenal. And I'm not sitting there saying that the vaccine is 100%, effective, but it's close as hell. People say, oh, a lot of people saying, no, well, you can just look at the virus and get the vaccine. The whole purpose of the vaccine, number one, folks, is to prevent the worst case scenario. We have people dying of this vaccine, of this virus, because they don't get the vaccine. I had the virus. I'm not saying I was on my deathbed, but it wasn't fun. It was tough. It was a rough 12, 13 days. My wife and I had a hard time. Okay, there was a couple of days there that was kind of rough. Granted, I'm a healthy guy. I don't eat great. I should eat better, but I'm a pretty healthy guy. And unfortunately, this is something not to play with. I just don't understand how we've got to the point now where let's not believe it because a certain party or a certain, sector of people that we don't agree with politically speaking, endorse it. That makes no sense to me at all. Again, if you have legitimate concerns about the virus, about the vaccine rather, go see a doctor. I just don't understand. This is things that we've done for years as a society. We have questions about certain things. You go see people, a specialist that specializes in that thing that you fear. I just don't understand how we got to a point now in society that, hey, we're going to be anti-science now because, I don't agree with that person's politics and they have an agenda. Or this vaccine is a way to spy on people moving forward. Do you know how silly that sounds? Do you know how silly and this dumb that sounds? Honestly? Like, take a step back about what your belief system. Now, we can sit there and argue about the mandates and how that's handled, because I have a lot of, moderate views on the mandates and have a lot of moderate views about how we should be handling it as a country, But getting vaccinated shouldn't be a political thing. It should be something that's fairly easy. And I'm not even saying that I'm not even saying that telling you that you should get it or else whatever, that you're a bad person. I'm not that guy. Put it in your head, because if I did that, all I'm doing is really honestly is pushing you away from doing it, honestly, and that's not my goal. If you ask me personally, should you get a vaccine? I'm gonna say yes. Get the vaccine. And again, I was someone 3-4 months ago that was still on the fence. I had questions, but again, what did I do? I took the intelligent approach. I went and saw my doctor. Okay, or people who actually who actually have, expertise in this field. Not some random dork on social media. And that's that. It shouldn't be something. This shouldn't be political. This should be something that's we should be all using common sense here. Use our brains. Get off social media. Use your brains. So I don't know, man. It's just it's sad, And now this Delta variant now, and people. There's even friends of mine who don't have a vaccine to wear masks again. They're fearful about this. I have friends of mine who don't want to get a vaccine, who haven't gotten a vaccine, but now I'm fearful about this variant. And to me, I don't want to sound like a complete asshole here, but if you have questions, go see a doctor. Go see a doctor. Just that simple. I don't know how hard that is. I don't know how hard that is. How hard that is to comprehend, honestly. But it's 2021. Everybody has an agenda. So anyway. NFL football, some football talk here. Training camp is now on the way. Actually, tonight, as we speak, the first preseason game is on. Steelers, Cowboys, or should I say fake football? Because I don't really care for preseason at all. Couple of things that stood out so far this week. First week and a half of camp. The season's going to be over for the Colts before it began. A couple days ago, we heard Carson Wentz out 5 to 12 weeks with an injury. Again, part of the narrative of Carson Wentz, can't stay healthy. Great talent, can't stay healthy. People saying, well, the coach should have made that move. That's easy to say in hindsight, but honestly, you can't let a talent like that. If you have a way to get a talent like that to come on your roster to be your quarterback, and you need that position to be filled, you have to do that, make that move. So the Colts didn't make the wrong move yet. The Eagles are judge a bullet. We can't say that for sure. Let's wait. Let's let the season play out first before we start judging it. 5 to 12 weeks, And then you have, of course, their best, probably the best player, right now, Quentin Nelson, their offensive lineman, who guards Carson Wentz blindside, who's going to be out for the same amount of time. This is important because the Colts' schedule is pretty tough this year, out the gate. That's why the timing of this injury is pretty bad. 5 to 12 weeks, even at the maximum. If you say 12 weeks, so we're in August right now, 12 weeks means end of October. So the Colts, have a lot to worry about right now. We'll see how this goes. I mean, they come back as early as 5 weeks, maybe whatever. If they go 2-2 out the gate, it should be fine. But I'm looking up right now the schedule out the gate because I did hear the schedule they had, but I forgot to write it down on my notes like a dork. But their schedule out the gate is not easy. Now, granted, they play in the AFC South, so other than the Titans, the division is trash. But their first games out the gate, they play out the gate. Where's it at? There he goes. Their first 4 games alone, oh my God, you play the Seahawks week 1, the Rams week 2, the Titans week 3, and the Dolphins week 4. 3 of those 4 teams are playoff teams. Okay, the 4th team, the Dolphins, might be a playoff team this year as well too. Week 5, the Ravens. So the first 5 weeks is immediately going to be a problem for the Colts. So they could be behind the ball depending on this injury and how this goes and all that. They could be behind the ball out the gate. Again, the only thing that saves them is that they play in the AFC South. But then again, the Titans are pretty good. You got a couple teams in the AFC, of course, Chiefs and Bills and obviously the Ravens and you got a couple teams that sneak by. So while you're taking 17 to the playoffs, this might be a problem for the Colts. I mean, that schedule, again, you're playing Seahawks, Rams, Titans, Dolphins, Ravens. If you go even 2-3, I say that's okay. Because these are 2-3, you can still hang around by October. Like I said, AFC South is not that good, so should be okay. But that's going to be a problem for the Colts. Dak Prescott got hurt also. I think the shoulder got hurt recently, also in camp. The Cowboys said they're going to take him very slow, day by day. They expect him to play week 1 again, like the Colts. The one thing about the Cowboys here is that they play in the NFC East, and it's probably even worse than the AFC South. We don't know how good the Giants are going to be this year. The Redskins are going to be, I guess, okay. Don't have a quarterback, though. I mean, Fitzpatrick was good for one every 4 games. The Eagles are going to be trash this year, so, come on. And, of course, the Giants, like I said, having fights in their they had 2 or 3 guys that quit the team because Joe Judge is too hard on them. Kevin Nash was one of those guys. He was supposed to drop 10 pounds, and he went on to do that, and he was talking crap about Joe Judge on social media. Whatever. People have choices to make. Whatever. I don't care. You want to leave, don't leave. Whatever. NBA free agency. Not in the books, obviously, but with 4 days? This day 4, actually. A lot more active than I thought it'd be. I'm surprised how active it was. Really surprised how active it was. For me, first off, the Miami Heat, favorite team. Training for Kyle Lowry, re-signing Duncan Robinson, tightening up their group, re-signing Victor Oladipo, who won't be available to January, but that's a good move. Of course, I'm going to miss Goran Dragic because he was in that Kyle Lowry trade. Like I said, I'll say it again. I've been saying it on social media. I like Kyle Lowry a lot. For Toronto, of course. I like Kyle Lowry a lot. I just don't. The price tag is always. To me, the price tag's icky. 3 years, $90 million. But again, this is capitalism. That's the going rate for guys. Chris Paul's making $30 million a year at age 37. Now, I'm not saying Kyle Lowry is Chris Paul good, but he's darn close at this point. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. But that's the cost of doing business. Personally, I'd rather have kept Goran Dragic, but that's a personal decision because I love Goran Dragic, one of my 5 favorite Heat players ever. I know that sucks a lot of people, but I'm a big Goran guy, big Dragon guy. But I thought the Heat did really well. They also got PJ Tucker as well too. So I think the Heat right now, on paper, I can see this Heat team really honestly being anywhere from a 4 to 6 seed in the East during the season, but then become a very dangerous team in the playoffs. Because the team's a little bit older, it's very possible that they may not run away with the East or run away with being a top tier team. That's why seeding teams in the we do predictions, of course, in the NBA for seedings and whatnot. It's really hard to it can be deceptive at times because you don't know how good a team's going to be. how chemistry will be, but they can catch on late in the year. Like this Heat team right now on paper reminds me of the Celtics in 2010. A Celtics team that was the 5 seed, and yet still able to go to the finals. So we'll see how that goes. My wife's texting me right now. I'm trying to tell her I'm recording. I'm telling her, hey, honey, I'm recording. So anyway, doing this on live in the podcast. Anyway, also other things still out in free agency. The Lakers also beefed up too. Of course, they got last week that Anthony Davis. They got Russell Westbrook in that trade. Remember the last podcast we did with my good friend Corey Vasquez. That trade went down around the same time we did the podcast. They beefed up Carmelo Anthony. Of course, they got there as well too. And they got a couple decent pieces. They should be in the mix. But again, with the Lakers, it's very simple. It doesn't matter who they get at this point. They go where AD goes. If Anthony Davis is not healthy in April, May, it doesn't matter. Down in the second round. Because we can't expect LeBron James to be the be-all end-all every year. He'll be 37 this December. LeBron James is still the best, arguably best player in the league. Probably. Certainly top 5, top 3, top 5. But you can't expect him to be carrying this team night to night. You saw in the playoffs against Phoenix when AD wasn't healthy. What happened? The Lakers fell apart. LeBron, and for the record, I'll say it again, LeBron should be expected to be this guy all the time. Just saying. I mean, I don't know. But Lakers, beefed up the roster. We'll see how that goes. I like the Knicks roster, actually. They got Kemba Walker, Eric Fournier. They re-signed Julius Randle. Look, the Knicks were a bit lucky, I guess it will. Blessed because of the situation with COVID and teams not being able to get things straight, so they took advantage of that. I'm not saying that they weren't good last year. They were a very solid team. But I think they'll come back to earth a little bit. I think they're probably a 6th seed at best in the Eastern Conference. I mean, I don't think they're as good as, obviously, Brooklyn, not as good as Milwaukee, not as good as Philadelphia. I don't think as good as Miami or Atlanta. So their ceiling to me is probably a 5 or 6 seed, and most likely a 6 seed. But I like how the roster rounded out. Sixers got Andre Drummond. We're still waiting for Kawhi Leonard to decide what he's going to do. I mean, he's expected to resign in the Clippers, but who knows? I mean, that thing. I was telling my buddy today on text. There's always that 0.0000001% chance he could retire because Kawhi Leonard's a weird guy. He's just different. He's wired differently. He could do anything. He could one day say, I'm done. I'll go to this team, or I'll retire for a year, or whatever. I do think he was signed with the Clippers, honestly, but don't put anything past him. Of course, Chris Paul stays in Phoenix. It's gonna be a fun year next year. I want to go too much detail on this. I want to do a wrap up a podcast with somebody, probably with Danny Thompson or somebody else, doing a complete free agency wrap up. So we'll see where that goes. If we get the chance to do that podcast, it'd be awesome. So, all right, 2 more things before I get you out of here. Joey Jordison, one of my favorite drummers, passed away last year. I meant to touch on this last week, but because of the schedules, will not be able to come in here and record a podcast. Joey Jordison is one of my favorite drummers. Passed away last week, age 40, I think 48. Don't want to get into details why and how he died. I know he had a lot of demons and stuff he dealt with through the years, and we can sit and speculate what happened and how this happened. Apparently, all we know is that he died peacefully. That's what we've been told. He was a drummer for Slipknot for a long time, and then he left the band I think 2013, and then he did other projects after that. Joey Jordison's amazing. He was a fantastic drummer. And I saw him twice live. I saw Slipknot back in 2004 and 2005, I think, also. One of the best live bands I've ever seen play. They were a fantastic live band. One of the cool things he did ever, too, was I think there was one show in 2004 where Metallica and Slipknot were on the same bill, and Lars couldn't do the show because he was sick, or I don't know if it was an injury or he was sick. So he stepped in, Joey Jordison stepped in and did, I think, if not the entire set, most of the set with the band, because they didn't want to cancel. And he's just all clips circulating the internet with him doing that. I was looking, I think I shared a clip on my social media of him playing Creeping Death with Metallica on that same show, and he was fantastic. So this is definitely a big loss in the metal community too, because again, Joey Jordison was one of my favorite drummers to watch. He was a very small frame guy, but God, he was so good. He played like someone that had like eight different hands and legs to play. He was so good behind the kit. So rest in peace to Joey Jordison. Before I go, I want to talk about Kevin Nash a little bit. Kevin Nash, if you're a wrestling fan, you know who he is. Big Daddy Cool Diesel. And we're going to talk about him on a topic on my wrestling podcast, Take 3 Wrestling, tonight when I record it. But I want to talk about it here a little bit too as well. I actually watched his interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin on Broken Skull Sessions. By the way, those interviews are fantastic. He did one Mick Foley I got to watch still, but he did. I think it's like 20 episodes in now, this thing. But Kevin Nash, man, Kevin Nash. I gotta be honest with you, and I might have said this before in the past. Was there a biggest Kevin Nash fan? Honestly, but first of all, I've always said that Diesel, Kevin, WF Diesel, 1994, his title reign 94/95 was one of the worst title reigns in history of the WWE. I've always been very negative about Diesel, and then of course he goes to WCW a year later, 96, and the NWO is formed and all that, and you hear about the politics behind there and whatnot. But I gotta tell you, Kevin Nash post wrestling years is such a fascinating guy. Like if you follow him on Instagram or on Twitter, like he's excellent conversation. Like he is a very smart guy, very laid back, and a lot of these guys you don't really care about because some of these guys end up being complete douches and when they retire and all that. And Kevin Nash seems like a really cool dude. Watching this interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin, this is probably my favorite one. One of my favorite ones, definitely, that he's done. He's just laid back and just cool. He's sitting there drinking wine while Stone Cold drinking his beer, his IPA beer. And talking about a lot of things on there. One of the things I learned on this interview that when he faced Undertaker at WrestleMania 12, Undertaker had actually gotten served divorce papers from his, I think it might have been his first wife at that time. And, it actually was a decent match all considering. But, learn a lot, about Nash on that interview. This laid back guy, honest, transparent. Then I heard his interview. He was also on the Eric Bischoff 83 Weeks podcast. Carmen Thompson, one of the many Carmen Thompson podcasts. By the way, why is bashing Carmen Thompson a thing? I don't get it. Carmen Thompson just brings out great content, works hard, not just on the pod, but also preparing the pods. He does the Jeff Jarrett podcast, Bruce Pritchard, Arn Anderson, obviously Eric Bischoff, and Tony Schiavone. This guy just busts his ass and still does mortgages on the side. And this is still a thing to bash the guy? I don't get it. Dude, we as a society just can't appreciate shit. Someone gets bigger, and we got to turn him down. We propel people to turn him down. Anyway, back to the Kevin Nash. But that Kevin Nash interview was amazing. On every 3 weeks also too. He was saying about how Hulk Hogan was the best worker he's ever worked with, and give example. It's actually kind of controversial because people don't look at Hogan as a great worker, but Kevin Nash is a smart guy. He's gonna be honest. But yeah, I love listening to Kevin Nash talk about not one of the best things about Kevin Nash. I like following him for. I love hearing him talk about politics because he's a self-professed moderate Democrat. He's a very common sense guy. I just love. He's a smart guy. And I was telling friends a couple days ago, if I had to pick another Conrad Thompson created podcast that he should do on a wrestler that I love to hear stories, Kevin Nash is the guy I want to do it. And it's funny. I was never a big Nash guy, but now I am. I think now I look back at Nash's career now. Might be a little too hard on him. Obviously, a lot of politics involved with him, how he handled things, especially WCW in the latter years before the company was bought out by Vince. But I don't know. I just like his vibe. Like he just has something to say. He's very interesting, very intelligent, and I love listening to him talk about things not related to wrestling. So especially his politics. So anyway, I think that's it. So. I'm on Twitter at EJChristian7, Earth Speaking Media, Earth Speaking Podcasts, across all podcast catchers. And until the next one, we'll talk soon. Later.